Hello and welcome to today's webinar on fixed asset optimization. My name is Ben Lawrence. I'm part of the sales group here at Gecko, and I'll be your host for today's event. Now, we're broadcasting today live from Gecko's headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in our accelerator lab. Now, this is a massive facility where our robots are born. I don't know if we'll get a camera scan, but if we do, you'll see this is also where we have life-size tank shells, boiler tubes, missile silos, that's right, missile silos, even process piping to build and test next generation robots. If you're ever in the area, please stop by. We'd love to host you for a visit. As for an agenda, we have a briefing to share with you that will take about 20 minutes, followed by 5 to 10 minutes for your questions. Now, speaking of questions, if you have any, please enter them into the webinar's chat box, and they'll go straight to my colleague, Mindy, who's right off camera. She's gonna be monitoring your chats and passing your questions along at the end, and we'll get through as many of those as we can. Now, let's begin with a very brief introduction on who Gecko is, and then we're going to jump into your story, the story of how your plant can drive millions in hard dollar savings right away. Now, on this slide, you're going to see Gecko is working with all of the organizations that are listed here and many others. Gecko works with everyone from the US military for their nuclear missile silos, to the oil and gas industry, some of the largest oil refineries in the world, even to your industrial peers in industries including paper, steel, power generation, and mining. And I should mention, if any of the logos on this screen jump out at you and you want to talk with anybody that you see here, just let me know and we'll do our best to make that introduction. And while all these organizations have their own unique problems that Gecko is helping them solve, we're seeing that there's a common theme that brings all these organizations together. In fact, maybe it's a theme that you're seeing at your company too. So what is that theme? Well, the theme or the challenge is inefficient, unreliable infrastructure. Everyone is struggling with this. Now, it's the perfect storm. In today's world, we have incomplete data sets from your assets, plus aging equipment, and a labor shortage that are all combining and forcing us to wrestle with safety threats, unplanned downtime, and lost profit. I wonder how that compares to your reality. If this rings a bell, if there are certain assets at your site that you're struggling with, please enter it in the chat. We would love to hear where this problem is manifesting at your facility to see if we can help you and your company. So how are most organizations trying to solve this problem of old, aging infrastructure and all of the challenges that come with it? Well, in most cases, the approach to solving this problem looks a lot today like it did 50 years ago. Now, maybe you've been a part of this traditional approach, or you've at least seen it in action. The traditional approach includes things like manual thickness readings to find corrosion or cracks, scaffolding and ropes to reach high places, and spreadsheets or even just paper notebooks where we store all of the data. Now, please understand, these traditional data sets, they are really important and they can still be helpful. But when we combine those methods, those traditional methods, with cutting-edge robots, software, and sensors, your industry peers see massive benefits. In fact, when we add these new technologies to solve old infrastructure problems, the bottom line benefits are jaw-dropping. For example, let's take a look at the impact our customers are reporting on just one common asset that I'll bet most of you have at your facilities, and that's a storage tank. Now, on this slide, what we're looking at is a customer's estimate on what the value is when they try to solve infrastructure problems the new way with robots, software, and sensors versus the old way. Now, what you see here is on the very first row, the initial cost of the tank is still the cost of the tank, in this case, $3 million. But all of the ensuing costs associated with ownership, related to inspection and maintenance, they all go down. Bottom line is their estimated savings on just one tank that they put through this new approach equals close to $1 million in savings for their company. Scale this approach across an entire fleet of tanks or an entire fleet of fixed assets, and we have customers right now who are on track to drive over $100 million in hard dollar savings. Now, this is $100 million that keeps those plants competitive. In some cases, our customers tell us it's the difference between staying in business and going out of business. Now, I wonder, for your plant, how important would it be to save $100 million? Now, if you're like most of our customers, you're under enormous pressure to reduce costs while still increasing production levels. And I know sometimes that can seem impossible, right? But if you're anything like your industry peers, there is a path that makes this mission possible. Boil it all down, and after driving this new solution across an entire plant, there are three main benefits that our customers see on their fixed assets. First, an 80% reduction in unplanned downtime. Second is they're doubling asset life through precision maintenance and establishing better SOPs, and we'll get to that later in the presentation. Third, they're seeing a 20% reduction in capital expenditure across their fixed assets. So how exactly are these leading companies do it? Well, these companies are following a three-step process that's driving big results. So let's take a look at what that three-step process is. First, the first step in this process is, as opposed to a handful of manual spot checks, they're using cutting-edge robots to do a comprehensive health scan of the entire asset. Second is they're leveraging predictive analytics and AI to build precision repair plans that are more accurate than anything they've had in the past. And third, they're placing continuous corrosion monitoring sensors on the hot spots of that asset in order to avoid catastrophic failure. So what do each of these three ingredients look like? Well, let's get a little more specific so you can see for yourself. The first of those ingredients is the robots. These robots are the foundational ingredient for the solution. In fact, it's the first technology that Gecko built, and it's something that we've been making stronger for well over a decade. Now, these crawlers, just like this one, this is one example of the many we have. These crawlers are equipped with all kinds of sensors to detect corrosion, cracking, and manufacturing defects that can be really challenging, if not impossible, to detect through traditional methods alone. So that's the first ingredient. The second ingredient is the software. Now, the software is a platform we call Cantilever, and Cantilever ingests all of the data from the robots, and in many cases, it will also bring in your historical inspection and maintenance data. And within hours of bringing in the robot data and your historical data, this system will build an optimal repair plan. Now, that's a key term, an optimal repair plan based on all those data sets. What we're hearing from our customers is, if they were to try to build a repair plan that was this comprehensive via their traditional methods, even with their best experts, it would take them weeks or months to build out a repair plan that Cantilever turns around within hours. So huge time savings there. And these precision repair plans are the key to transforming maintenance at these industrial plants. And that brings us again to the third ingredient, which you may remember are these sensors. Continuous corrosion monitoring sensors, to be exact, that give you accurate readings every day. These sensors are a source of truth that for the first time ever can tell you what process variables are killing your equipment in the first place. For example, if you work in an oil refinery, what mixture ratios or flow rates are driving your process piping to die 5 times faster than it should? Wouldn't that be nice to know? These sensors, combined with the cantilever software platform we just described, drive incredible value. Well, what does this look like in real life? How are companies driving value? Well, let's take a look at a specific case study that we just recently went through with one of our customers in the mining industry. In this case, the customer had 2 identical tanks. These tanks were the same age, they came from the same OEM, and they drive the same process every day. And based on their traditional inspection and maintenance practices, they thought that both of these tanks were in similar condition. But wow, we actually learned that these tanks were completely different, and the customer was blind to a lot of problems that were on the horizon. Now let's take a look here at the first tank. The customer thought on this tank they only had to do minor repairs on the second shell course. But using predictive analytics that only Gecko has, we discovered that this tank was on track to suffer serious corrosion between now and the next planned shutdown. And based on the old style of maintenance planning that they had in place at that time, they thought that they had to replace the entire second shell course at enormous cost. Instead, Gecko's solution helped them understand that they had a much more affordable path to install a tank shell liner. Well, the result? First, they avoided a catastrophic failure that almost certainly would have happened before the next planned shutdown. Second, they performed a repair that cost 60% less than they thought they had to spend and got them just as much useful life on the tank as they would have had anyway. Now let's take a look at the second tank. You may remember there were 2. So on the second tank, Gecko's robotic scan combined with our software analytics helped them determine that instead of investing close to $1 million to do major repairs, they could simply adjust the fill height and get the same amount of remaining life. Now imagine that, going from $1 million in repairs to 0 in repairs. That's a game changer. On these 2 tanks alone, the customer won 3 battles. First, they avoided the time and headache of draining, cleaning, and scaffolding the tank, since Gecko's robots can do all of that inspection without any scaffolding, and while the tank remains online. Second, they reduced their projected maintenance costs by 50%. And third, they were able to avoid over $1 million of additional CapEx over that period of time. So huge win for this company, and that's just on these 2 tanks. More to come. Now, you might be asking yourself, where do you begin this type of transformation? We work with you to prioritize a project, and we base it typically on 2 criteria. The first is the consequence of an asset's failure. What's the implication or cost to you if an asset fails? And the second is your perceived health today of that asset. Now, if you look at this chart, you'll see this is just in general terms where a lot of our customers end up ranking their different assets. The bottom line for you is this: if you have hoods, boilers, process piping, or acid tanks at your facility, I will bet you a dozen donuts there's a very good chance that you're sitting on at least $1 million in immediate value for your plant. We should talk. All right, moving ahead. So what are the next steps? Well, it's pretty simple. The first step, if you choose to engage with us, is that we'll interview you to conduct a needs analysis to understand what your current approach is to inspection and maintenance. and get your feedback on where you think we should begin. The second step is that we engage Gecko's subject matter experts. These are industrial pros who are very familiar with the types of projects that you're probably facing, and they will visit your plant to make sure that your equipment is a good fit. The third step is that we work with you to build a value case that both you and Gecko agree will drive at least a 5 times return on investment. Now, why a 5 times ROI? Because we don't want to waste your time or ours on a project that does not make you a hero. And what we found is that 5 times ROI is the minimum threshold that makes this a no-brainer for everybody. Now, your first step, however, is to contact us. Feel free to scan the QR code that's on this slide. You can email us, or you can call us at the number that's listed on the screen. In fact, that will ring directly to me. So I look forward to hearing from you. Imagine your plant safer, less downtime, and higher profit. If you're anything like your industry peers, this is a terrific way to drive immediate value for your company, and we're very excited to have a chance to work with you. Now, that's the end of our formal presentation. Now we're going to check out the chat box with Mindy and see if any questions came in. So, Mindy, do we have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Ben. We have a lot of great questions coming into the chat here. And if we don't get to your specific question that you have in there, please feel free to reach out to Ben with his contact information on the slide, and we'll make sure that your answers get addressed. But let's start off with the first one here that came through. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, how much does it cost?
Wow. So the question is, how much does it cost to engage with Gecko? Well, the fun response to that is the investment to engage with Gecko is 5 times less than the cost of your problem. Remember, 5 times ROI, or we don't want to work with you. But really, the cost, if you have an asset that you are currently building scaffolding in order to inspect it, you can probably do that same inspection far more comprehensively through Gecko for the same or less dollars. If you're draining and cleaning and pulling offline an asset, you'll definitely save money. And if you're suffering any sort of unplanned reactive maintenance on that asset, there is real value from the get-go. So this is right out of the gates, if we're not able to save you a few dollars, we're probably not going to do the work. But in most cases, we do find that this is a very affordable option.
All right, another question's coming in about the data. So what kind of historical data do you import?
Okay. Someone was listening very carefully, Mindy. Yeah. So you may have mentioned we talked about pulling in your historical data sets into Cantilever. There are 3 different types of data sets that we often pull in. The first is your historical inspection data. Now, again, even if those inspections were done manually, there is gold in those reports that we can pull in to build better analytics on your repair plan. So inspection data is number 1. Second is your old maintenance records. Whether it was a panel replacement or overlay or a weld, whatever you did, again, when we can pull that historical maintenance data into our system, you end up with a better repair plan. And then the third type of data that we pull in is from your process database. So if you have PI or OSIsoft, it used to be called, your process data is what we pull into Cantilever in order to do root cause analysis on what's driving all of this corrosion and damage in the first place.
All right, the next question is more focused on the actual robots. So what do your robots work on stainless steel?
Question is, do our robots work on stainless steel? The answer is no. The rule of thumb is the way these robots adhere to a surface is through magnets. So if you can stick a magnet on the surface, it's going to be a great fit for these robots. If it's stainless steel, we're really not there yet. The robots are not there, but we're working on it. Let's stay in touch.
Here's one. It says, how long does it take to inspect a tank or a boiler?
How long to inspect a tank or a boiler? Hours, not days. Days, not weeks. So if it's let's say it's a 600 megawatt boiler, we can do that within a few days. If it's a tank, we can do that between the time the sun comes up and the sun goes back down. So we're talking very quick turnaround for us to actually go out and run these robots and get you the information that you and we need to drive your repair plans. Here's Mindy.
I think that looks like it's a wrap on the question.
Okay, terrific. If you do have questions beyond what we just covered, feel free to reach out directly to us. We are so excited to help you optimize your fixed assets, and this is a great time to begin the process. Thanks again. Stay safe. We'll be in touch.